In this video, we're going to look at how we can style our navigation menu. So currently from the previous activity, we have it set up as just a list of our pages, but obviously this doesn't look like a common web page, website menu even. So we're going to look at how we can apply CSS to change this styling. So obviously we'll be working a lot in the main.css file of our code. All right, so and again, this doesn't really make a big difference. You can type it down here, but I often like to try and put things in the order that they appear on the screen. So because we're dealing with the navigation, I'm going to insert it in between the nav CSS and the main CSS. All right, but if you do it underneath, it's perfectly okay too. The order doesn't matter. It just needs to be included in there. And so what we're going to do to start with is we're going to use the selector nav UL. All right, and so I guess similar to how in the previous activity we used hash container to specifically target the division with an ID of container. What we're doing is we're specifically targeting the unordered list within the navigation menu. So if we want to then include a list in our main section later on, for example, the CSS won't impact that. So we can still have dot points in our main section. We just don't want to get the dot points in our navigation. Okay, so we use the selector nav space UL to identify that we only want the list within the navigation menu. And we're going to use the attribute list style type. And you can see there's all different ones we can select. So the generic one is obviously circle, but you can have decimal leading 0. So those are obviously for numbered lists. You can have disk, you can have a square. We obviously want none. So we're just going to select none. You can't type none, obviously would be beneficial, but I guess you do have those options of selecting. So you know what your choices are. You can play around with that if you like, but obviously we don't want any style for our bullet point. We're also going to set the margin and the padding to 0. So basically this is just going to take out any space around it so that we can then customize the link. So if we save that, Control S, keeping that in mind, all right, you'll see basically it's got rid of the bullet point, pushed it right over to the edge, which is where we want it. All right, so the next thing we need to do is we need to change it so that our navigation items are listed horizontally instead of vertically. So to do that, we're going to change the list items in our navigation. So the selector is nav space LI. And we're going to use a property called float with the value of left. So if we save this, we'll see what happens is it lines up together, but we've also lost our background color, which is a bit of a concern. But we can save it. Don't stress, it hasn't gone away. It's just when we float the elements, it does create a bit of an issue with our navigation. So to fix it, we need to go to our unordered list and we need to choose this first option, overflow : hidden. So basically what it's doing is hiding any extra overflow that occurs. And you can see once we've done that, our red magically comes back. All right, and the other thing you might actually notice is that it sort of gets rid of the gap between the header and the navigation. All right, but then we do have a bit of a weird gap between the navigation and the main. All right, and same thing with the main and the footer. All right, so we can actually add this line of code, overflow : hidden, into our other sections, and that will help us to remove those gaps. So I'm just going to quickly do that, overflow hidden and a colon. All right, same thing in our main section. Overflow hidden, and our footer, overflow hidden. All right, we'll save that. And now when we check our live preview, all right, we can see all the sections blend nicely into each other, which is what we've wanted. All right, so we've now got ourselves, a nice compact website that's all connected. Again, we've used the colors to bookend it. We've got our different background color. The container is centered. It's all coming together nicely. All right, but obviously we've got the list elements, sorry, the navigation elements lined up, but they're all squeezed together. They still don't really look like website menus. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to get into the specific links. So within the navigation list items, we want to get to the link. So nav LIA. All right, again, we don't want this to be for every link in our web page, just the links that are inside the list items inside our navigation. All right, so that's why the selector is a bit longer. But what we're going to do is we're going to change the display element to a block element. And basically this just creates a rectangle around it, so we don't have to click the link necessarily. We can click anywhere around the text. The next thing we need to do is we're just going to change the color of the text to white. So again, I'm going to use the hex code for this one. Can use RGB as well. Text alignment. So we're going to center the text within our link block that we're creating. And then we'll add some padding. So this is just going to create a bit of size to our box. So 14 pixels means how far either side, left and right. 16 pixels refers to how much space top and bottom there'll be. The final one is the text decoration. So this actually refers to the underline that you see on links. And we want to remove that. So we're going to set text decoration equal to none. All right, so we Control S once we've got that added in. And if we have a look, you can now see that the links have turned white. All right, they do have a bit more space around them. And even if we don't necessarily click on the word, it will go to the link. Obviously, we haven't set up page 2 yet. This is why the link doesn't work. All right, but it's just showing us that we don't have to click right on the word for the button to work. All right, so we're almost there with our menu. I guess the one thing that most website menus have is it will have a slightly different color when you hover over the button, so we can sort of see, if we're clicking here in the middle, are we on the home page? Are we on page 2? It's a little bit hard to tell. All right, so being able to change the color when we've got the mouse there is going to be very useful. So how we do that is we use one final selector, so nav list item, the anchor, and then we say :hover. So what the :hover means when we hover the mouse over this element. All right, so what we want to do then is just change the background color. Oops, colon. And in this one, you can see that we've got a hex code with just 3 numbers. So when you have three numbers, it's basically the same as saying 101010. All right, so it's a little shortcut if you just want to use things like the basic grays or black and white. You can do with just, I'll show you here for an example, FFF is going to be white. All right, so having the 3-digit hex code is the similar version of having the 6 digits, but just with, the extra. Oh, sorry, it's actually 1111. So just repeating those again. So you can make it 3, just a bit of shorthand. So if we save that and we test it now, looks exactly the same. except for when we hover over the menu, you'll see it turns that, it's not quite black, it's a quite charcoal dark gray, but pretty close to black. But it does help us to see that, okay, this is page 2, but when I get to here, it's now home page button. So that's how we successfully style our navigation menu to look a bit more like a web page navigation menu.